My brother demanded I buy him a new car to win back his ex. When I refused, Mom turned the whole family against me. Then my brother lost control and slashed my car tires. So I called the police. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how insane my family actually is. I figured I'd share this story with you guys because honestly, I need some outside perspective on whether I'm the wrong here or if my family has completely lost their damn minds. Let me paint you a picture of the players in this show. I, 29 male, work as a loan officer at a decent-sized bank here in Ohio. Nothing fancy, but it pays well enough. Then there's my older brother, Walker, 31 male. This dude has been finding himself for the past 3 years since he got laid off from his warehouse job. And when I say finding himself, I mean he plays Call of Duty until like 4 in the morning, sleeps until 2 p.m., and tells everyone he's working on his side hustle. Our parents are basically professional enablers at this point. Mom hasn't worked in probably 10 years. Just sits at home watching those daytime talk shows and managing everyone else's business like it's her full-time job. Dad's been at the same boring insurance company forever, comes home every day to Mom complaining about something and just nods along because it's easier than dealing with her when she gets worked up. They've been financially supporting Walker this entire time, paying his car insurance, giving him gas money, buying his groceries, letting him live in their basement rent-free. The whole family treats this grown man like he's still a teenager. So anyway, last Tuesday, I'm at home after work just chilling on my couch watching Netflix and eating leftover pizza when someone starts absolutely pounding on my front door. Not normal knocking. This sounded like the police were about to break the thing down. I look through the peephole and it's Walker, and he looks like he just won the lottery or found out he's getting an inheritance or something. I open the door and this dude pushes right past me without even saying hello, starts pacing around my living room like a caged animal. He's got this manic energy that immediately put me on edge because I know Walker. And when he gets excited about something, it usually means he's about to ask me for money or a favor. "Dude, you're never going to believe what happened," he says, still pacing back and forth in front of my TV. "What's up?" I ask, already getting a bad feeling about where this is going. "Harper broke up with me. Walker's been dating this girl Harper for about 8 months. She works at one of those upscale hair salons downtown where a basic cut costs like $80. And honestly, she seems way too put together and ambitious for someone like my brother. I always wondered what she saw in this unemployed guy who lives with his parents and has no real goals in life. Now, normally when someone tells you their girlfriend dumped them, you expect them to be upset or depressed or at least a little bummed out. But Walker is acting excited about it, which confused the hell out of me. "Okay, why do you look happy about that?" He explained that Harper told him he needed to get his life together, and apparently he'd figured out exactly what that meant. He needed a car. Not just any car, a real car that would show he was serious about his future. This is where I should mention that Walker has been driving our dad's old 2008 Honda Civic for the past year since his piece of crap Pontiac finally died and left him stranded at a gas station. When I pointed out that he already had a car, Walker went into this whole explanation about needing something that screamed success and ambition. I was starting to see where this conversation was heading and really hoping I was wrong. Walker pulls out his phone and shows me a picture he's been looking at. It's a brand new BMW M4 with all the fancy options you can imagine. Leather seats, premium sound system, sport package, the whole 9 yards. The price tag at the bottom of the screen says $78,000. I literally laughed out loud. I thought he was messing with me like this was some kind of joke, and he was going to show me a picture of a reasonable used car next. But Walker wasn't laughing. He was dead serious, staring at me like I should be getting excited about his brilliant plan. I told him, good luck with that, and maybe he should start with something more realistic. That's when he launched into his theory about how Harper was used to dating guys with money and needed to see that he was on her level. The logic was so backwards, it hurt my brain. In Walker's mind, rolling up in a $78,000 BMW would somehow prove to Harper that he's ambitious and has his life together. Never mind that he doesn't have a job, any savings, or any way to actually afford this car. Those were just minor details in his master plan. When I asked how he planned to pay for a $78,000 car he gave me, this looked like I was the idiot for not immediately understanding his brilliant scheme. Apparently, I could easily co-sign for him or just buy it outright and he'd pay me back. When I pointed out that he didn't have a job, he said he'd get one because having the car would motivate him. Plus, he had some big things in the works. I told him I couldn't co-sign for a loan that expensive and definitely wasn't buying him a car that costs more than most people make in a year. His whole attitude changed instantly. The fake excitement disappeared, and he got this entitled, indignant look that I remembered from when we were kids. This was the same expression he used to make when mom told him he couldn't have a second slice of cake, or when dad wouldn't give him money for video games. He started going on about how I make good money, and what else was I spending it on since I don't have kids or a wife. When I said I was spending it on my own life like rent and savings, he hit me with the classic line about how family helps family. There it was, the family card Walker's go-to move whenever he wants something from someone. He genuinely seemed to think that because we share DNA, I owe it to him to fund his ridiculous fantasies. After about 20 minutes of going in circles with Walker getting more frustrated and entitled, he finally called me selfish and stormed out of my house. He slammed the door so hard that my neighbor's dog started barking. I figured that was the end of it. Walker has always been dramatic, and I thought maybe after he cooled off for a few days, he'd realize how ridiculous his request was and start looking for actual jobs instead of dreaming about luxury cars he can't afford. Man, was I wrong about that. This was just the beginning of the family drama that was about to unfold. 2 days later, I'm sitting at my desk at work trying to focus when my phone rings. The caller ID shows it's mom, which immediately puts me on edge because she never calls me at work like ever. So I picked up thinking there was some kind of emergency. "Christian, honey, I need to talk to you about Walker." And there it was. No emergency, just mom wanting to discuss my brother's latest scheme. I should have known better. Walker had obviously gone straight home after our conversation and told her his version of events where I was the heartless villain who refused to help my poor struggling brother who just needed a little support to get back on his feet. I stepped outside the bank so my coworkers couldn't overhear what was probably going to be an uncomfortable conversation. Mom launched into this whole speech about how Walker was going through such a difficult time and how the breakup with Harper had really devastated him. According to her, he just needs a little motivation, Christian. Something to show him that good things are possible. The way she talked about it, you'd think Walker was some kind of wounded war veteran who needed therapy, not a grown man who'd been unemployed by choice for 3 years. The logic was completely backwards. Most people get the job first, then buy the car with the money from said job. But in Mom's world, Walker needed the car to inspire him to work. When I explained that Walker wasn't looking at just any car, but wanted a $78,000 BMW, with all the fancy options, Mom didn't even blink. She said he deserved something nice after everything he'd been through. Like getting dumped by your girlfriend somehow entitles you to luxury goods that you can't afford. In her mind, Walker's emotional pain justified spending more money than most people see in 2 years. Then came the guilt trip that I'd been expecting since the moment she called. Mom reminded me about all the sacrifices they'd made for me growing up. How family should always come first. How I was the only one in the family with real money, so it was my responsibility to help out when needed. "Christian, you're doing so well for yourself. Walker just needs a little boost." When I pointed out that $78,000 wasn't exactly a little boost, she said it wasn't like I'd be giving the money away since Walker would pay me back. The woman genuinely seemed to believe that Walker's promise to eventually repay me was as good as cash in the bank. The entitlement was breathtaking. She wasn't asking if I could help or suggesting that maybe Walker should look into more affordable options. She was essentially demanding that I fund her golden child's midlife crisis because that's what family does. The assumption that I would and should pay for Walker's luxury car was treated like a given, not a request. When I told her I wasn't buying Walker any car, her whole tone changed. Suddenly I was being selfish, ungrateful, and clearly didn't understand what family meant. The woman who gave birth to me was lecturing me about family values because I wouldn't enable my brother's delusions. "I'm really disappointed in you, Christian. I thought I raised you better than this." Then she hung up on me. My own mother hung up on me because I wouldn't agree to spend my life savings on her unemployed son's fantasy car. I stood there in the parking lot of my workplace staring at my phone and trying to process what had just happened. That evening, I'm at home making dinner and trying to decompress from the day when someone starts knocking on my door. Normal knocking this time, not the aggressive pounding that Walker had done earlier in the week. So I figured maybe he'd come back to apologize for being such an entitled ass. Nope, it was Mom, and she looked pissed. She didn't wait for me to invite her in, just pushed past me like she owned the place and made herself at home at my kitchen table. The audacity of showing up uninvited to lecture me in my own house was unreal, but perfectly in character for Mom. She launched into this whole speech about family responsibility and how I was being selfish by not helping Walker when he needed it most. According to Mom, since I was the successful one in the family, I had an obligation to help Walker when he was struggling. She kept emphasizing that I didn't have any dependents. Like that meant my money should automatically go toward funding my brother's ridiculous schemes. "You don't have children to think about, Christian. What are you saving all that money for? She seemed genuinely confused about why I would want to keep my own money for myself. Like the concept of personal financial goals was foreign to her. The conversation got heated when I pointed out that Walker was a grown man who needed to figure out his own problems. Mom acted like I'd suggested abandoning a child on the side of the road. He's not asking you to solve his problems. He's asking for help getting a car. When I reminded her that we were talking about a $78,000 luxury sports car, not some basic transportation, she said I was being dramatic and that lots of people have nice cars. She completely ignored the fact that those people usually have jobs and income to support their car payments. When I refused to budge on the car issue, she completely lost it. Started yelling about how ungrateful I was, how much she'd sacrificed for me over the years, how I owed it to the family to help Walker get his life together. She was acting like buying him a BMW was some kind of moral imperative that any decent son would understand. Finally, I told her the conversation was over, and that if she thought Walker needed a car so badly, she and Dad could figure it out themselves. The suggestion that they should handle their own son's problems instead of dumping them on me seemed to genuinely shock her. She stood up so fast, she knocked over her chair and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around and delivered her parting shot about how I was going to regret this decision and how family should mean more to me than money. She slammed my door so hard that the windows rattled and my neighbor's dog started barking again. I was left standing in my kitchen shaking with anger and trying to process the fact that my own mother had come to my house uninvited to demand that I spend my life savings on her golden child's midlife crisis car. The woman had completely ignored every reasonable point I'd made about Walker needing to get a job first, about the car being ridiculously expensive, about him having no way to make payments. None of that mattered to her because in her mind I existed to solve Walker's problems, and my reluctance to do so was just selfishness that needed to be overcome. I knew this wasn't over. Mom doesn't give up easily when she wants something, and she definitely wasn't going to let this go. But I had no idea just how far she was willing to take things to get her way. So the next day, Dad calls. Dad started off trying to sound reasonable and diplomatic, which is his standard approach whenever Mom gets worked up about something. He said Mom was pretty upset about our conversation the night before and felt like I'd been disrespectful to her. He acknowledged that she gets passionate sometimes, which is Dad's polite way of saying she goes completely unhinged when she doesn't get her way, but suggested maybe we could find some middle ground on the Walker situation. What if instead of the BMW you helped Walker get something more reasonable like a nice used car? There it was. Dad wasn't trying to solve the actual problem, which was Walker being an entitled, unemployed loser who expected other people to fund his lifestyle. He was trying to get me to compromise just enough that Mom would stop making his life miserable at home. He didn't care whether it was good for Walker or fair to me. He just wanted the family drama to go away so he could have some peace. When I explained that it wasn't about the specific car, but about the principle of not enabling Walker's bad decisions, Dad got uncomfortable. He doesn't like conflict, and he especially doesn't like having to choose sides between Mom and one of us kids. I understand what you're saying, son, but he's really struggling right now. Maybe just a down payment. Dad, if you think Walker needs a car so badly, then you get him one. There was silence on the other end of the line. Dad clearly hadn't expected me to turn it back on him. Christian, you know we don't have that kind of money. Then maybe Walker doesn't need a $78,000 car. When I told him I loved them both, but wasn't changing my mind, and that if they thought Walker needed a car so badly, they could figure out how to get him one without dragging me into it. Dad sighed like I just crushed his last hope for avoiding World War III at home. I was afraid you'd say that. Your mom's not going to let this go, you know. And he was absolutely right about that. Dad knows Mom better than anyone. And if he was warning me that she wasn't done fighting about this, I knew I was in for a long battle. The man has been married to her for over 30 years. He's seen how she operates when she wants something and doesn't get it right away. After I hung up, I sat there thinking about how screwed up the family dynamics had become. Mom treats Walker like he's still a helpless child who needs constant support. Dad enables Mom's enabling because it's easier than confronting reality, and I'm expected to fund the whole dysfunctional circus because I'm the only one with any money saved up. The fact that nobody in my family seemed to think Walker should get a job before buying a luxury car was mind-blowing. They were all operating under the assumption that I would eventually cave and pay for it. So the practical details of how Walker would afford the ongoing expenses weren't worth discussing. I was starting to realize that this wasn't just about a car. This was about the fundamental family dynamic where Walker's wants always took priority over everyone else's needs, and anyone who didn't fall in line was made to feel guilty about not being supportive enough. I'd been playing along with this dysfunction for years, but apparently drawing the line at $78,000 was going to be the thing that finally exposed how toxic the whole system really was. A few days passed quietly after Dad's phone call, and I thought maybe they'd finally accepted my decision and moved on. Then my cousin Jennifer texted me asking what was going on with Mom's Facebook posts. I don't really use Facebook much anymore, but I logged in to see what she was talking about. Mom had been busy painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful child. She'd posted a series of passive-aggressive messages over the past few days that were clearly aimed at me. It's sad when children forget everything their parents sacrificed for them. Some people only care about money, praying for my son who's going through a difficult time. Unfortunately, not everyone in the family wants to help. She didn't mention me by name, but it was obvious what she was doing, making herself look like the long-suffering mother and me look like the selfish son who abandoned his family over money. Several relatives had commented with supportive messages and crying emojis. The entitlement was staggering. She was literally putting our family business on social media to try to shame me into compliance. In her mind, refusing to buy Walker a BMW was such an obviously wrong decision that public humiliation was justified. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, relatives started calling. Mom had called every single one of them with her version of the story where Walker just needed help getting a regular car, and I was being unreasonably stubborn. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They'd start by saying they didn't want to get involved but had heard Walker was struggling and maybe I could help him out. When I explained that Walker wanted a $78,000 BMW and had no way to pay for it, they'd act surprised and say, "That's not what Mom told them. $78,000. Your mom said he just needed help with a car." But even after hearing the real story, most of them still thought I should compromise somehow. Maybe get him a cheaper car, or help with a down payment, or co-sign for something more reasonable. The idea that I might say no completely was apparently unthinkable. Grandma was the worst. She laid on the guilt, thick talking about how her sons always helped each other during hard times. How disappointed she was that Walker and I couldn't work together. How family is all we have in this world. She kept saying things like, "Money comes and goes, but family is forever," like that was supposed to convince me to bankroll Walker's delusions. The whole family had this attitude that my money was somehow communal property. Since I was doing well financially, I owed it to everyone else to share the wealth when they needed it. The concept that I might want to keep my own money for my own future was treated like some kind of character flaw. What really got to me was how they all bought into Mom's narrative without questioning it. None of them thought to ask why a grown man with no job deserved a luxury car, or why his problems were automatically my responsibility to solve. They just accepted that Walker needed help and I should provide it because I had money. The social pressure was intense. Every family gathering, every holiday, every casual conversation was going to be tainted by this if I didn't give in. Mom had successfully turned most of the extended family against me by playing the victim and leaving out crucial details about what Walker actually wanted. Mom's Facebook campaign continued too. More posts about difficult times, tough decisions, and praying for family members who'd lost their way. She was really milking the martyr act for all it was worth. Every post got supportive comments from relatives who didn't know the full story. The manipulation was masterful, really. She'd created this narrative where she was the grieving mother trying to help her struggling son, and I was the heartless brother who had money but refused to share it. The fact that Walker wanted a car that cost more than most people's annual salary was conveniently left out of her sob story. I finally blocked her on social media because I couldn't deal with the passive-aggressive nonsense anymore. But the damage was done. Half the family thought I was a heartless miser who'd abandoned his brother over money. The worst part was that none of these relatives were offering to help Walker themselves. They were all very concerned about his situation and very critical of my refusal to solve it, but none of them were volunteering to co-sign loans or contribute money. It was easy to be generous with other people's cash. Aunt Carol was especially hypocritical because she kept talking about how important it is to help family. But when I suggested she could contribute to Walker's car fund, she suddenly had excuses about her own financial situation. Apparently, family loyalty only applied when it was my money being spent. The whole experience showed me how toxic the family dynamic really was. Everyone expected me to sacrifice my financial security for Walker's benefit, but none of them were willing to make any sacrifices themselves. It was easier to pressure the one responsible family member than to acknowledge that Walker's problems were his own fault. By the end of the week, I'd gotten calls from pretty much every relative we have. Mom had done a thorough job of rallying the troops and painting me as the villain. But their pressure tactics were just making me more determined not to give in. If anything, seeing how entitled and manipulative the whole family was just confirmed that I was making the right choice. I knew Mom wasn't done fighting. The social media campaign and family phone tree were just the opening moves. She was going to keep escalating until she either got her way or burned every bridge in the process. Last Saturday morning, I'm drinking coffee and watching TV when I hear car doors slamming outside. I look out the window and see Mom and Walker pulling boxes out of Dad's trunk. My stomach dropped because I knew this couldn't be good. They came to my door carrying these boxes, and when I opened it, Mom pushed past me with this fake sweet voice that immediately put me on high alert. She said they'd brought me some things and started setting boxes down in my living room. Inside the boxes was all my old stuff from their house. They'd clearly gone through my old room and packed up everything that belonged to me. When I asked why they were doing this now, Mom stood up with her arms crossed and delivered her ultimatum. Since you've made it clear that you don't consider yourself part of this family anymore, we thought you should have your belongings back. I never said I wasn't part of the family. I just said I wasn't buying Walker a car. Same thing. Family members help each other. If you won't help Walker, then clearly you don't want to be part of this family. The logic was insane, but perfectly in character for Mom. In her mind, refusing to buy Walker a car was the same as rejecting the entire family, since I wouldn't fulfill my obligation as the family ATM. I was clearly choosing money over blood, and therefore didn't deserve to be part of the family anymore. Walker just stood there with this smug look on his face like they were really showing me what's what. He was enjoying this little performance, probably thinking it would finally force me to apologize and agree to buy him his car. When I said okay and thanked them for bringing my stuff, they both looked confused. This wasn't the reaction they were expecting. They wanted me to beg to apologize, to promise I'd reconsider if they'd just take me back into the family. Instead, I was treating their dramatic gesture like a minor inconvenience. Mom got that frustrated look she used to get when her manipulation tactics didn't work on me as a kid. So that's it. You're really going to let your family walk out of your life over money. You're the ones walking away, not me. I'm just not going to chase after you. You're being a real piece of shit, you know that, Walker said, stepping forward. Watch your mouth in my house. They headed toward the door, and I thought they were finally leaving. But instead of getting in the car, Walker walked over to my Honda Accord in the driveway. I watched through the window as he pulled out a knife and started slashing my tires. Not just one or two, all four of them. And Mom just stood there watching, not even pretending to disapprove. The entitlement was unbelievable. They'd come to my house, delivered their little ultimatum, and when I didn't react the way they wanted, they destroyed my property. In their minds, I'd forced them to do this by being unreasonable. I ran outside and asked what the hell he was doing. Giving you something to spend your precious money on, Walker said, finishing up the last tire. You're insane, both of you. Mom shrugged. Maybe now you'll understand how it feels when family doesn't help you. The twisted logic was amazing. They just cost me hundreds of dollars in tire replacement because I wouldn't give Walker tens of thousands for a luxury car. In their minds, this was some kind of poetic justice. I called 911 right there in front of them. You're calling the cops on your own family, Mom asked, like I was the one being unreasonable. I'm calling the cops on someone who just destroyed my property. Oh, and thanks for doing this in front of my security cameras, by the way. The best part was watching Mom's face go white when I mentioned the cameras. She'd completely forgotten about the Ring doorbell I'd installed last year. They'd just committed vandalism on camera, complete with their license plate visible in the driveway. Walker was already heading back to Dad's car, but it was too late. I had the whole thing on video, including their threats and Walker's admission that he was trying to make me spend money. They sped off, but the damage was done both to my tires and to any remaining relationship we might have had. The cops showed up about 10 minutes later, and I filed a report for vandalism. The officer said since it was clearly intentional destruction of property caught on camera, they'd definitely be pressing charges. Do you want to add a restraining order request to this? He asked. Yeah, I think I do. I spent the rest of that day dealing with insurance companies and tire shops. 4 new tires cost me $800, which really pissed me off. But I was also relieved in a weird way. They'd finally shown their true colors, and now I had proof of how crazy they'd gotten. The whole family had been pressuring me for weeks to give Walker money, and when I refused, they resorted to destroying my property. It was like dealing with toddlers having a tantrum, except these toddlers were adults who should know better. The irony wasn't lost on me that they just forced me to spend $800 because I wouldn't give Walker $78,000. In their twisted logic, this was somehow teaching me a lesson about family loyalty. All it really taught me was that I'd made the right decision staying away from their dysfunction. I kept thinking about how Mom just stood there watching Walker slash my tires. She didn't try to stop him or tell him it was wrong. She was completely okay with her son destroying my property because I wouldn't enable his delusions. That told me everything I needed to know about what kind of people they really were. The security footage was crystal clear. Walker with the knife, Mom standing there approving, both of them making statements about teaching me a lesson. The cops said it was one of the most clear-cut vandalism cases they'd seen because the perpetrators had essentially confessed on camera. I knew this was the end of any relationship with Mom and Walker. There was no coming back from this. They'd burned the bridge so thoroughly that even if they wanted to apologize later, I wouldn't be able to trust them again. Anyone willing to destroy your property over money isn't someone you want in your life. The restraining order got approved on Monday. Mom and Walker are now legally required to stay away from me and my property. Dad can still contact me, but he hasn't. I think he's embarrassed about what happened. Or maybe Mom has forbidden him from talking to me. I sent Walker a bill for the tire replacement via certified mail with my lawyer friend's letterhead. $800 for 4 new tires plus court costs if he doesn't pay up in 30 days. Haven't heard back from him yet, but I'm not holding my breath. The best part has been watching the family dynamics shift. All those relatives who called to pressure me about helping Walker, they're singing a very different tune now that word got around about the tire slashing incident. My cousin Jennifer was the first to call and apologize. Turns out, Mom had made it sound like Walker just needed help with a reasonable car purchase, and I was being stubborn. She definitely left out the part about the $78,000 BMW and Walker's complete lack of employment. I had no idea it had gotten that crazy. Your mom made it sound like you were just being difficult about helping with a car. Aunt Carol called, too embarrassed about getting involved. Even Grandma called to say she was disappointed in Walker's behavior and that destroying property was never acceptable. No apology for the guilt trip, but at least she acknowledged that Walker crossed a line. The real validation came when Harper texted me. Some mutual friend had told her about the whole tire-slashing mess, and she wanted to apologize for Walker's behavior. She also confirmed what I'd suspected. The car thing wasn't even the real reason she broke up with him. Turns out she was tired of Walker being lazy and entitled, and his solution to their breakup just proved her point. She said the fact that he thought buying a BMW would magically make him attractive and successful showed how delusional he really was. She also mentioned that Walker had been telling people they broke up because he didn't have a nice enough car for her, like she was some gold digger who dumped him over his transportation situation. The guy literally cannot accept responsibility for anything. I found out through the family grapevine that Dad tried to co-sign for a car loan for Walker, but got rejected because of their debt-to-income ratio. Turns out they're not in as good financial shape as they pretended to be. Mom's been pressuring Dad to help Walker, but they literally can't afford it, which makes their demands that I pay for everything even more ridiculous. They wanted me to take on debt they couldn't qualify for themselves. The whole family was expecting me to solve a problem that the actual parents couldn't handle with their own finances. Walker's still unemployed and still driving Dad's beat-up Honda. Mom's Facebook posts have stopped, probably because people started asking uncomfortable questions about what really happened. Hard to play the victim when everyone knows your son slashed his brother's tires. I'm honestly relieved this whole thing is over. For years, I felt guilty about not having a closer relationship with my family. But now I realize they were just using me. Every interaction was about what I could do for them, never about actual relationships. I changed my phone number and didn't give it to any of them. If there's a real emergency, they can contact me through work. But I'm done dealing with their drama and entitlement. Some people think I'm being too harsh cutting off my whole family over money. But it was never about money. It was about respect. They showed me that they don't see me as a person, just as a resource to be exploited when needed. The restraining order is good for 2 years. Hopefully by then they'll have figured out their own problems and stopped expecting me to fix them. If not, I'll just renew it. The security cameras turned out to be the best investment I ever made. Not only did they catch Walker's vandalism on tape, but they also gave me peace of mind, knowing that if any of them show up again, I'll have evidence. I still think about Dad sometimes and wonder if he's okay. He's stuck in that house with Mom and her anger about the whole situation. But he made his choice when he tried to pressure me into enabling Walker instead of standing up for what was right. Maybe someday he'll realize that keeping the peace isn't worth sacrificing your kid's financial security. As for Walker last, I heard he got arrested for failing to appear in court for the vandalism charges. Apparently, he thought ignoring the court date would make the whole thing disappear. Mom posted on Facebook asking for money for his bail, but based on the lack of responses, I don't think anyone's falling for her sob stories anymore. I sleep better at night, knowing I don't have to worry about the next financial emergency Walker is going to create, or the next guilt trip Mom is going to lay on me. My money stays in my bank account where it belongs, and I can plan for my own future without factoring in my brother's bad decisions. The funniest part is that Walker still doesn't have his BMW after all that drama, all those burned bridges, all that family destruction. He's still driving Dad's old Honda and still unemployed. He destroyed his relationship with me and got a criminal record. And for what? He's in exactly the same position he was 6 months ago, except now he has legal problems too. Sometimes the trash really does take itself out. I'm just glad I finally stopped enabling it.